main topic, we spoke about the chaos at the synagogue, right? And how a poorly planned event that was a permitted protest, turned into chaos. And the SRG was called in, and then you had the counter protest, and they were both set up right outside the front of the synagogue. The mayor was overseas on his farewell tour, getting his awards in Uzbekistan or wherever he was, and he wanted to make sure everything went fine because he heard about it. Only heard about it because of the political connections, because it wasn't a big protest. It wasn't a major protest, and it was very easily could have been handled at the command level. But we discussed it in depth last week. The basis of the protest is irrelevant, but they weren't happy, and obviously, so since then, the NYPD has it came out in the Daily News that the NYPD grills commanders in an investigation in the handling of the Park East Synagogue protest, right? So this is broken by, the Daily News, Chris Sommerfeld, and he's one of their editors, right? And NYPD Internal Affairs is investigating the department's response to this month's raucous pro-Palestinian protest, which I really don't think it was pro-Palestinian, but outside the Park East Synagogue. A move that comes after Mayor Adams grew angry with Commissioner Tisch over the incident. So that comes out, and when you start looking at the article, right, it says Internal Affairs Group 1, which handles investigations of captains and above, as well as Internal Affairs itself, has conducted official interviews of Chief Manhattan North Ruel Stevenson, his exec, Eric Pagan, who's the deputy chief, Inspector Andrew Natu, who's the borough operations commander. For those who don't know what the operations commander does, they basically are in charge of operations. They're in charge of details. They're in charge of anything that's going on enforcement-wise within the borough. They oversee the precincts in that borough. And Noreen Lazarus, who is the CO of the 19th precinct, we spoke about her last week and what we think that her culpability is in this. The investigation is focused on who from the borough command should have responded to oversee the scene, in addition to questions about whether the protesters were allowed to get too close to the entrance of the house of worship, sources say. So, I mean, really, Adams, who was on his trip to Israel and Uzbekistan when the protest played out, posted a tweet condemning it as totally unacceptable, which we don't disagree, and questioned the police handling of the incident, which we really don't disagree. Adams privately expressed his displeasure to Tisch for insufficient policing of the event. A source with direct knowledge of the conversation said he was very mad. Honestly, the most mad I've ever seen him with her. The source said, I'm sure that partially contributed to the apology because an apology was given. I think we talked about it last week, right? That Tisch came out and she apologized and said that we weren't on point with the way that the protest was set up, which we all agree with. And lastly, when Fabian Levin, who's Adams' spokesperson, was asked about the IAB investigation, he said that the local precinct commander's response to the November 19th demonstration did not meet expectations. So do you disagree with any of those statements, Rob?
Any of those statements? I mean, I don't know why they're so mad about it. I mean, yeah, was there something done wrong? Absolutely. To be fuming mad over. I mean, I personally would be more mad about when a large group takes over, 7th Avenue and you can't even get down the block. I mean, that I would be mad about. But a protest that kind of went awry. Yeah, there were definitely mistakes, and sure, there should be some sort of accountability. Like we've discussed offline, was it necessary for, Internal Affairs Bureau, Group 1, to get involved in it? I don't know. I have my reasons why I think they did, but
Well, we'll get into that. And like you said, we posted on the Executive Perspective podcast on X, right? Follow us at Exec Perspective. I don't understand how a poorly planned, permitted protest, which definitely fell short of the standards of the NYPD, has become an investigation of misconduct by the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau. For those of you who are not NYPD, right, the Internal Affairs Bureau is dedicated to preserving the integrity. This is right off the NYPD website, or the New York City website, which is critical to the function of the police department in fighting corruption within the NYPD. The department cannot successfully serve the public without maintaining the public's trust. IAB helps to ensure that trust by detecting, investigating, and bringing to justice the small number of New York City police officers and civilians who engage in misconduct and corruption. And again, for those who aren't familiar with the structure of the NYPD and internal affairs, right, Rob? You want to go through this?
Well, you can see that the Chief of Internal Affairs, right underneath him, you have the executive officer, but to the left of that on your screen, you see with the Special Investigations Unit, and that's where Group 1 is. So you literally have where Group 1 reports directly to the Chief of Internal Affairs. That just shows the significance of the unit, and really, their need to investigate, and make sure that things don't leak to the people that they're investigating. So yeah, there's the hierarchy is right there, and it's an important job and function, but does it raise to the level of a detail gone wrong? I don't necessarily think so.
Right. Internal affairs is there for misconduct and corruption. Like, this is just poor handling of a detail. So now you have a borough commander, Ruel Stevenson. What is his culpability? Like, that internal affairs will be looking at him. He's the borough commander. So obviously, listen, when you're the boss, the buck stops with you, right? So he's the boss of Manhattan North. The detail happened in the 19th precinct. 19th precinct is in the confines of Manhattan North. Okay. So ultimately, he's supposed to oversee everything that happens. Is he getting involved in this detail? He's not. He's got nothing to do with this detail.
No, I mean, he's getting notified, but that's about it, maybe, right?
Right. You got Eric Pagan, who's a deputy chief. There's a picture of him as an inspector. As a deputy chief, he's the executive officer of Patrol Borough Manhattan North. What his involvement is, I don't know. I'm going to assume it's a Saturday. He was probably working, and he was the highest executive that's in the Patrol Borough. He's probably the executive officer of operations, right? Which means that he oversees the operations portion. There's an administrative executive officer and an operational executive officer in patrol boroughs, right? So he's probably the operations executive officer. I don't know for sure, right? So maybe he oversees all the details that happen in Manhattan North. So are they looking at him for that?
I will tell you, this is my thought, why IAB got involved. And this is why IAB Group 1 investigates, captains and above. So
Right.
they're going to be the ones doing the investigation. But I feel that because Tish put a thumbnail on it, and the mayor also expressed his disconcern for it, they felt that, all right, let's get IAB Group 1 to show that, oh, it's serious and we're taking a serious look at it, when it wasn't necessary. But it's also to lock them into their statements and to everything that's done, so that if something is found out later on that wasn't done that they said, then they can hang their hat on that. Because when you do the GO 15, the General Order 15, right? It's a taped conversation. It's done by a higher rank, so that you have to answer, questions specifically directed and narrowly related to your duties. So I can see why they want to, like, make sure you're locked into your statements so that if something happens later on, then they could hang you even worse. But to me, this just looks like it was a, like we said in the beginning of the show, right? A fishing expedition for IAB. It was just for them to throw out the line, and they're looking to catch somebody to make an example of them. So I don't know,
Yeah, Reed here says, Chief Thompson will do anything the PC wants. She promoted him from 1-star to 3-star in less than 45 days. I've had dealings with Chief Thompson when he was the CEO of Group 1, and I was an executive, and I didn't have a real problem with him. I thought he was a pretty straight shooter. He was an IAB guy, but he's a career IAB guy, and he got put in charge of IAB after Tisch was made the police commissioner, and they moved out the former chief of IAB because of improprieties that were found under the investigations for Madry, for Chief Madry and so forth. So I have no problem with him going from 1-star to the chief of IAB. He's definitely got the resume for it. He's been an executive and a lifer in internal affairs. So I don't have that. As far as him doing whatever she says, listen, if the police commissioner says conduct an investigation, you're going to conduct an investigation. I don't see any misconduct. This is administratively a mess. Whoever put this detail together didn't put the detail together properly. We talked about it last week. We put up the map. We showed where I think that they should have placed the protesters, the counter protesters, so they have sight and sound to the synagogue, which they were protesting, and the counter protesters have sight and sound to the protesters who they're counter protesting. Things should have been put in place. The barrier should have been placed beforehand. It appeared from certain videos that they were kind of running free in front of the place, and then SRG came in, pushed some barriers up, and placed them in place. They kind of got, at that point, it's a lot more difficult to wrangle them up. But again, it's just poor planning. Now, looking at the, this is Andrew Natu. I think he's an inspector now, and he's the operations commander. So he's probably the one that signed off on the detail request when the precinct put the detail request together. Because for those who don't know, as much chaos as it looked like, it wasn't a lot of people. It wasn't a huge detail.
No, it wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't a huge detail. It wasn't large. It could have been policed by a very small detail because they were somewhat orderly. Yes, they're screaming. The things that they were saying were vile, and people don't like what they were saying, but they have the First Amendment right to say whatever they want. They weren't threatening. The counter protesters were yelling back at them. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. That's your First Amendment right, and it's our job to protect you and protect your First Amendment right. So that detail didn't need to be a huge detail. The detail didn't get out of control. Where the issue arises is that it blocked the entrance and egress to the front of the synagogue, where worshipers couldn't get in and out freely and safely. So that's where it became an issue. And obviously there's political connections to the synagogue. So, all of that being said, there's also, I read something, and I couldn't find it to bring it up, but I read something that the CO and Deputy Inspector Lazarus was off, and they were questioning her leave, whether she had. Listen, it doesn't have to be your annual vacation, especially as an executive, as we all know, Rob, right? How many days are you working? You put so much time on the books because you work so long of hours. You have all this time that you're going to take advantage of taking some time off. It was a holiday weekend. She probably took off. Was it a vacation pick? Probably not. But so now something happens at your command. Yeah, it sucks. You get caught with your pants down, so to speak, where something happened in your command, you weren't there, but you weren't working. But if you're not there, you got to make sure your XO is working. You got to detail that weekend at, a protest. Your XO should have been working and should have been there.
Yeah, I mean, if she takes off, she takes off. I mean, obviously, you can have somebody else fill in for you or whatever. But listen, as what I remember when I was the the XO in the 2-3 or whatever, and I wanted to take off, I'd submit my 28 to the CO. Now, when the CO took off, he didn't submit it to me. He submitted it to the admin, the adjutant or somebody in the borough that would authorize the day off. And then the normal question would be like, who's covering the command when you're off? And then you would say, all right, my XO's here. So you can't blame her for taking off, but and did she know there was a detail and she put the 20 in later? I don't know, whatever it is, but she was off and she had to cover. And that may be the reason why it's falling on, the XO in the borough, because maybe there's other things that went on, such as, hey, you can have off, or you can have, we'll cover you or whatever. So just with hard X core, I dimmed 2 lights. I just want to make sure that's, if that's better for you. I don't know. He said it was too white and bright for him. So I did dim two lights I took off. So if it's not, I can make additional adjustments.
And here,
I don't want to blind anybody.
J Ramming 26 is saying, the problem is that the 19th precinct CO being off and she wasn't supposed to be, but that's a rumor. And again, even if she banged in, even if she wasn't scheduled to take off and she took off. Listen, I was a precinct commander in 2 different precincts. It's the weekend. I'm not bothering a borough executive on the weekend if I'm not coming in. Sometimes you're rolling the dice. If I'm not going to come in, I got nothing on the schedule. But if she banged in and she knew that there was a protest 2 doors down at the synagogue, maybe that's questionable if your XO is not working. But your XO, maybe your XO was working. Maybe your XO had the duty and he or she was going to be in anyway. So, you take these things into consideration.
You just brought up a really good point. Like if I'm the duty captain, or I'm the duty inspector, or even the duty chief, somebody should have told me that, hey, there's something going on in the 19th precinct that you may want to give special attention to. So, if whether she's off or not, right? Because anything can happen. A pop-up could happen. Anything can happen. And technically, I would say that the borough had the responsibility to notify, somebody that was going to be there. Now, if Eric Pagan was working and he knew about it, well, then maybe that's why the responsibility fell on him. But, that's something you should know. I mean, when I was a duty chief and you call operations, they would usually give me a rundown of everything that's going on. They'd be like, all right, we got this protest, who's covering that, this, that, and the other thing. So I knew if something happened, I could call over and say, hey, is everything all right? Yeah, everything's good. I don't need any other resources or whatever, or I need additional resources. So I mean that's what operations is for. So did operations make the proper notifications? Did operation tell people it's going a little awry? So I mean, there's all things to look at. So
yeah, and the same thing, like you said, the duty inspector and the duty captain, right? They have to call into the borough.
Right.
Now, what does the borough tell you? What do I want to know when I call into the borough? I want to know who's working, because that way I know whether there's executive coverage in the command, because I ain't going there. If there's executive coverage in the command, that's a command I don't have to worry about covering for oversight, right? And if there's anything going on, any details, right? And also they tell you, of course, they always tell you about hospitalized prisoners, right?
Yeah.
And so you're aware of what's going on in the borough that you're working. Now, Yankee Kid, 6432 Yankee Kid is saying that word has it the borough CO and XO were both working. Okay. So at that point, they're really not going to know about this until it pops off. And now they got an incident and the 19th precinct is calling the borough saying that we have a protest that's a little bit out of control, or they hear over the radio that they're calling for a level 1 mobilization for crowd control. Right?
I mean, Manhattan North was pretty good. I remember because I used to have the duty there, not only as the duty captain, but also as a duty inspector. I had the borough, Manhattan North was my borough, and on occasion we cover Manhattan South too. When they on certain weekdays or weekends or whatever. But they were pretty good. They would have a list of everything that's going on, so you would know what details. And I'm sure the borough commander and the borough XO knew there was a demonstration going on, knew there was going to be something. Whether or not they thought it was going to get out of control or not, I refer to Timmy Boudet, right? When Timmy Boudet is at every freaking detail with his microphone, and he's probably at home with his microphone. Pass the gravy, honey.
Megaphone.
Yeah, I need more turkey. So, but he's a great guy, and he's
Step
out there
off
all
the
the time.
street or you're going to be arrested.
That's
You
it.
can't- Listen, he's giving a fair warning. You
Yeah.
love that thing.
So do I think maybe maybe Eric Pagan, if he was the XO working, he should have been there. He at least should have stopped by and seen what's going on. Sometimes you got to get out of the chair. And I'm not saying Eric didn't. Maybe he went there and it was peaceful, and then it turned ugly later. But then there should have been notifications. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. To be honest with you, dealing with details and everything else, it's a permitted event. That's a big thing to me. It's a permitted event, so we know who the people are that are going to be there. We have that intelligence. So we also know what type of protests that group has been involved in the past and whether they were problematic or not.
yeah.
So that's a big thing to me, is that I have that intel. It's not at a pop-up demonstration. You don't know who's there. They're paid agitators. We're going to talk about that in the next segment and things like that. But this was a permanent event. So you knew who was going to be there. You knew if they had problems in the past. So like I said earlier, this may have been a 1 in 8 detail, which is like a 1 sergeant, 8 police officers, detail, because you didn't expect to be problematic, but it was poorly set up. You weren't being preventative, right? My wife always says it: prevention, 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 right? Set up the barriers. This is where you're going to be. You're going to be over here. Set up the barriers. This is where the counter protesters are going to be, even when they show up, because we know that when this group shows up, there's always going to be counter protesters, right? And so, again, it's piss poor preparation, right? Poor preparation equals piss poor performance, right? So this was poor preparation. I don't know that a chief needed to stop by even until after it blew up. Then obviously, somebody get out of your, and maybe that's what happened. Maybe they never showed up. But again, does that rise to internal affairs being involved? Group one being involved? That's for misconduct. Unless there's more to it that we don't know. That it was alleged, maybe they looked into it and the two of them were out to dinner somewhere and they blew it off and didn't answer up, or whatever the case may be. Now you're looking at maybe misuse of time or whatever the case may be. But I mean, you're still allowed to eat, right? So I just don't know where something that in the big picture of things isn't a huge deal, because thankfully nobody got hurt. Nobody was arrested. No officers were injured. No civilians were injured. That's the big thing, right? That's the big thing. Yeah, they effed up. They blocked the entrance pretty much. I mean, the front doors were accessible, but then you're walking out into the crowd and they're right on top of them, which is not appropriate. So I can't. And again, we don't have all of the information, but from everything you're seeing, the mayor got pissed off, so he's sicking the dogs on them, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the two of them were angry, the mayor and the police commissioner, and they did. They sent out the dogs. They sent out IAB Group 1, and you know what? It puts a little fear in everybody, because you don't want to get interviewed by IAB Group 1. I mean, and what are they locking you into? What are they going to ask you? So I don't know. To me, it looks like it was a political hit, that they were looking to hang somebody and get somebody to be the fall guy. Like we said, there was a fishing expedition. Who can we get? If we can't get Stevenson, can we get Pagan? If we can't get Pagan, can we get the operations inspector? So, I mean, to me, they were looking for somebody. They were looking for blood.
You've just watched a clip from our live episode. Click the description to watch the full episode. Like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this.